In 2021, a cryptocurrency called Luna turned ordinary people into millionaires. Its sister coin, Terra USD, promised something the entire financial world had said was impossible. A digital dollar that could never break, paying 20% interest, risk-free, forever. Together, they were worth $60 billion. The third largest crypto empire on Earth, bigger than most banks. Its founder told his critics he didn't debate the poor. And then, over 72 hours in May of 2022, all of it vanished. $60 billion. Not stolen in a hack, not frozen by a government. It simply evaporated, wiped out by the exact math its creator swore would protect it. Savings accounts drained to zero. Families lost everything they had. Some never recovered. This is the autopsy of Terra USD and Luna. How the safest-looking bet in crypto became the fastest wealth destruction in its history. And the warning signs it flashed are still lighting up projects people trust right now. To understand how $60 billion died in 3 days, you have to understand what made it look immortal. The story starts with a man named Do Kwon. Young, brilliant, and absolutely certain he was right. A Stanford-educated engineer from South Korea, Kwon had a vision for the one thing crypto still couldn't do: hold still. Because that was crypto's dirty secret. Bitcoin could double in a month, and then lose half its value in a week. Nobody wants to buy coffee with money that might be worth 30% less by dinner. So, the industry invented stablecoins, digital tokens, designed to always be worth exactly $1. Most of them did it the boring way. For every digital dollar they printed, they kept a real dollar in a real bank. Simple, backed, safe. Do Kwon thought that was primitive. Why hold billions in cash when code could do the job for free? His stablecoin, Terra USD, everyone called it UST, wasn't backed by dollars in a vault. It was backed by an algorithm, and its twin, a cryptocurrency called Luna. Here's the trick that made him famous. The system always let you trade one UST for exactly $1 worth of Luna, no matter what the market said. If UST ever dipped to 99 cents, traders could buy it cheap, swap it for a full dollar of Luna, and pocket the difference. That buying pressure would push UST back to $1. In theory, the peg fixed itself. Forever. For free. On paper, it was elegant. In reality, it was a machine that only worked as long as people believed in it. But belief needs a reason. And Kwon built one. He called it Anchor. Anchor was a savings account for UST. Deposit your digital dollars, and Anchor paid you 20% interest a year. 20%. 20%. At a time when a real American bank paid you half of 1%, Kwon was offering 40 times more and calling it safe. Money flooded in. Of course it did. If you could park your savings somewhere that paid 20% and swore it could never lose value, why would you keep money anywhere else? By early 2022, more than 70% of every UST in existence was sitting in Anchor, harvesting that yield. The whole ecosystem rocketed past $40 billion. Luna, the token underneath it all, climbed from under $1 to more than $119 at its peak. Early believers became millionaires, then multimillionaires. They called themselves lunatics. They tattooed the logo on their arms. And at the center of it stood Do Kwon, part engineer, part prophet, tweeting through his doubters, naming his newborn daughter Luna, and telling the world that anyone who bet against him simply didn't understand the future. He was, for one shining moment, one of the most powerful people in all of crypto. Before we open this one up, subscribe and hit the bell. Because on this channel, no fortune is too big to end up on the table. And trust me, the cause of death is never what you'd guess. The empire looked untouchable, but the whole thing was balanced on a single, invisible assumption. And that assumption was about to be tested. Every autopsy comes down to one question. What was the fatal flaw? For Terra, it was hiding in plain sight, inside the very design Kwon called genius. Start with that 20% yield. Ask the question almost nobody asked at the top. Where was the money coming from? A real bank pays you interest because it lends your deposit out at a higher rate and keeps the difference. Anchor didn't really do that. It paid out far more to depositors than it ever earned from borrowers. The gap was covered by a reserve, a giant pot of money that Terraform Labs kept topping up to keep the 20% alive. In plain terms, Anchor was bleeding. By early 2022, that reserve was draining so fast it was projected to run dry within months. The yield that anchored the entire $60 billion empire wasn't a return on anything. It was a subsidy, a promotion. And promotions end. This is the first red flag, and it's the oldest one in finance. When a return looks too good to be true, it usually is, and the 20% that pulled everyone in was never actually being earned. Now the deeper flaw, the one built into the machine itself. Remember the trick one, UST could always be swapped for $1 of Luna, and back again. That's what held the peg. But look closely at what's holding up what. UST was backed by Luna. And Luna's value came almost entirely from demand for UST. Each one was propping up the other. It's two people standing in a bucket, each trying to lift the other by pulling on the handle. As long as the market is calm and confident, it looks like it's floating. But there's nothing underneath. No cash, no gold, no hard asset. Just belief, pointed in a circle. And circular systems have a terrifying property. When they fail, they don't fail gently. They fail in a spiral. Here's the nightmare mechanic. If enough people panic and dump UST at once, its price falls below $1. The system's fix is to let them swap that UST for a full $1 of freshly minted Luna. So it prints new Luna. A lot of it. But printing millions of new Luna crushes Luna's price. And Luna crashing destroys the only thing backing UST, which makes even more people panic and dump. Which prints even more Luna. Economists have a name for it. A death spiral. The exact mechanism designed to save the peg becomes the thing that guarantees its destruction. Critics saw it. Loudly. A prominent analyst warned, publicly, that the design would collapse the moment confidence cracked. Others called Anchor's yield a ticking clock. One trader challenged Do Kwon directly. And here's where the hubris turns from a footnote into the cause of death. Kwon didn't engage the criticism. He humiliated it. When one skeptic questioned the model, Kwon replied that he didn't debate the poor. He took a $1 million bet against a critic who said Luna would be worth less in a year, the kind of public dare that dares reality to test you. He posted, over and over, that 95% of crypto projects would die, and that it would be fun to watch. The confidence wasn't a personality quirk. It was marketing. Every dismissive tweet told the lunatics the doubters were just jealous and told them to hold. This is the second red flag. A founder who treats every question as an insult and turns doubt into a loyalty test. When the person running the machine can't afford to hear that the machine is broken, nobody left inside will pull the alarm. But Kwon wasn't stupid. Somewhere underneath the swagger, he seems to have known the peg couldn't stand on belief alone. Because in early 2022, he did something that quietly contradicted his entire pitch. He started buying Bitcoin. Billions of dollars of it. Through an organization called the Luna Foundation Guard, Terra assembled a war chest of more than $3 billion in Bitcoin and other reserves. The stated purpose to defend the peg. If UST ever wobbled, they'd sell Bitcoin to buy it back and prop it up. Sit with the contradiction. The whole selling point of UST was that it needed no collateral. The algorithm was enough. And now its creators were stockpiling billions in hard assets, just in case the algorithm wasn't. It was an insurance policy on a system that was advertised as not needing insurance. One thing before we cut deeper: if this autopsy's got you hooked, hit like. It's how YouTube decides whose fortune ends up on the table next. Now, if you'd parked your savings in that 20% account, would you have seen the warning sign in time? Drop your answer in the comments. Because what happened next is the part almost nobody saw coming, and it's the exact flaw that brought the whole thing down. By May of 2022, the pieces were all in place. A yield that was quietly running out of money. A peg held up by its own reflection. A founder who'd bet his reputation on it being unbreakable. And a hidden pile of Bitcoin, waiting for a fire its creators swore would never start. The empire was still worth $60 billion. It had days left to live. It started quietly, the way bank runs always do. On the 7th of May, 2022, large amounts of UST began moving out. Hundreds of millions of dollars pulled from Anchor. Huge withdrawals from a trading pool called Curve, the plumbing that kept UST swapping smoothly for other stablecoins. With that plumbing drained, a wave of selling hit a thin market, and UST did the one thing it was never supposed to do. It slipped below $1, 98 cents, then 95. On its own, a few cents shouldn't matter. But this was a machine that ran on confidence, and confidence had just cracked. The lunatics told each other to stay calm. The peg would fix itself. It always had. This time, the fix became the poison. As holders rushed to escape, they swapped their UST for freshly minted Luna. The system printed and printed. Luna's supply began to explode. On the 9th of May, the Luna Foundation Guard deployed its Bitcoin war chest, selling billions to buy UST and drag it back to $1. For a few hours, it almost worked. Then the selling overwhelmed it. The Bitcoin was gone, and the peg was still broken. The insurance policy emptied, and the fire kept burning. Now the spiral went vertical. UST fell to 60 cents, then 30, then 20. Each drop triggered more minting of Luna, and each new flood of Luna destroyed its price. Luna fell from over $80 to 60, then to 26, then to single digits, then to pennies. The numbers stop feeling real here, so hold on to this one. In the space of a few days, the supply of Luna exploded from around 350 million tokens to more than 6 trillion. 6 trillion. A coin worth $119 at its peak was now worth a fraction of a cent. To buy a single dollar back, you'd need thousands of them. By the 13th of May, it was over. Major exchanges halted Luna trading entirely. UST, the dollar that could never break, was worth about a dime. More than 90% of the ecosystem's value had been erased in under a week. Around $60 billion gone. But the number isn't the tragedy. The people are. Because Anchor had been sold as a savings account, the people hurt worst weren't gamblers. They were savers. Retirees who'd moved their pensions in for that safe, 20%. Families who'd parked a house deposit. In online forums, crisis hotlines were pinned to the top of the page as people posted that their life savings had hit zero overnight. This wasn't paper wealth for most of them. It was everything. And Do Kwon? For a while he ran. He posted that he was heartbroken. He launched a second version of Luna, as if the first $60 billion had been a rough draft. Then the warrants came. South Korea issued one. Interpol issued a red notice. In March of 2023, Kwon was arrested in Montenegro, caught trying to board a flight to Dubai on a fake Costa Rican passport. After a long extradition fight, he was sent to the United States. And in August of 2025, Do Kwon pleaded guilty to conspiracy and wire fraud, admitting he had misled investors about how stable his stablecoin really was. In December of 2025, a federal judge sentenced him to 15 years in prison. The prophet of the unbreakable dollar had broken, and so had the lives of everyone who believed him. So, let's sign the certificate. What actually killed Terra? It wasn't a hacker. It wasn't bad luck. And it wasn't even the death spiral that was just the murder weapon. The real cause of death was a single mistake, made by design. Terra mistook confidence for collateral. It built a $60 billion tower on the belief that people would never all head for the exit at once. And people always, eventually, head for the exit. You can see the pattern now, because the whole story was flashing it the entire time. The first flag was a return too good to be true, with no honest source. 20%, risk-free, forever paid not by real earnings, but by a reserve quietly draining toward empty. When nobody can clearly tell you where the yield comes from, you are the yield. The second flag was a promise with nothing hard underneath it. Not dollars, not gold. Just one token backing another. In a circle, a system that worked beautifully right up, until the moment everyone needed it to. And the third flag was the human one. A founder who answered every doubt with contempt, and turned belief into a loyalty test. The louder someone insists their machine can't fail, the closer you should look at the machine. And here's the uncomfortable part. That pattern didn't die in 2022. Somewhere right now, a platform is advertising a yield that sounds a little too generous, backed by something a little too clever to fully explain, run by someone a little too confident to question. The names change, the math doesn't. So here's the question I'll leave you with. Which of those three red flags, the impossible yield, the missing collateral, the founder, who won't be questioned, have you already seen somewhere you've put your own money? Tell me in the comments. I read them. That's this autopsy closed. The next fortune on the slab is already on your screen, and if you want to be in the room when it happens, subscribe. New autopsy every week. Nothing in this video is financial advice.